Welcome to MacroCode. If you are new to this channel, consider subscribing and watching our previous videos. So today we are going to learn about creating a minimal web API with the ASP.NETCORE. So traditionally, ASP.NETCORE API is good for backend applications. However, if you want to develop microservices and cloud native application, then this type of technique can be a little too much, and hence there is need of minimal APIs. So minimal APIs are architected to create HTTP APIs with minimal dependencies. So as just the word means minimal APIs. So they are ideal for microservices and apps that want to include only the minimal files, features, and dependencies in ASP.NET Core. So we are going to create minimal API with SQL Server database. But first thing that we need to do, we need to create, so we'll just create our database. So I've installed SQL Server Express. So we'll create our database called minimal API. So we are going to use this database to demonstrate how you create a minimal API. So on this database, you want to create a table. So we want to create a table. So create table. We call it students. So with ID, call ID int identity. So this will be our primary key, not null. Then we want first name, worker. Then you can have this as 50. Can be nullable. Then you can have last name. Worker. You can have this also as 50. Then you can have it as nullable. So you just want to create this table, then you'll be able to see how we are going to use it. So our table has been created. So if you come to under minimal APIs, then we have a table called students. So it has only 3 fields: ID, first name, and middle name. So our ID is our primary key, and so that is it. Let's see script. So I think that's fine. So what we need to do, our table has any keys. So we have created a table called students. So this is our table. So what we need to do, we'll open our Visual Studio, then create new. Then we want to create ASP.NET Core Web API. So we'll choose this one. Then next. Then we can call it minimal API. Minimal API. Then next. So we are going to use ASP.NET Core 7. Let's use 7. Then here we can use controllers. Then you can uncheck to use minimal APIs. So you can see we have this checked, and it says use controllers. But in case you want to use minimal APIs, then you uncheck. So we have unchecked that. Then we create. So it will create our minimal API. So there we are. So we have our minimal API. So this is our API. So if we launch this, let's just try to launch it. So this is our default project. So there we are. So our project has been created. We have the default open API Swagger. Then you can see we have the get weather forecast. So that is it. So what we need to do, let's create a student class. So on our table, on our minimal API, let's create a folder called students. Let's call it models. Then under models, let's create a class called student. Then we add. So on our model class, we'll be having our ID, what we have on our table. So this will be int ID get set. Then we just want to have 3 fields. So we'll be having string, then first name, then string, middle name, last name. That was the name, last name. So these are our fields. So the next thing that we need to do is to create a DB context class, which will connect our model class to our SQL database. So let's create a folder called context. So I can call it context, or let's just use, we can call it data. Then here we can create a class called data context. So this class, we want it to inherit from DB context. DB context. So if you can see, we need to install Microsoft Entity Framework Core and Nugget. So if you just click that, it will actually install. So it has installed. If you come to dependencies, you'll be able to see it here. It has already installed. Then let's create a constructor. So that is it. Then on our DB context, you can have DB context options. There we have it. Then we pass our data context. Then this one will be options. Then inside here we have what we call base. Then we'll be having outside here, call it base options. So we have defined our, so I can actually do away with this. Then we do this. So here, remember we had defined our model class called students. So we want this to reflect to our database. So what we'll do, can actually come here and we can do public, then we say db set, then we pass our model student, then we provide the name of the table students. So you can see. So then we need to modify our program.cs class. So if you come here, we need to add something. So here you can come and say builder.services.add db context. Then we say data context. Then say options. Then we can do this. We say options dot use. We want to use SQL server. So use SQL server. And we say builder. Oops. So we are going to configure the connection. So dot configuration dot get connection. Then we say here our connection will be default connection. So we want to connect this to our SQL server. So we do that and we close. So if we come here, we need to install certain nuggets. So if just hover here, we need to install. Let's just come here and manage nuggets. Then we install the SQL server. We need to install Microsoft Identity Framework SQL Server. So install that. So there we are. So we should be able to now use it here. So you see, we have it there. So after we have installed that, we need to configure our app settings.json. So you can see here, we need to say connection string. Then I have my connection string here. I'll just copy it. Then if you come here, we paste that. So our connection string, so this is the server address. Then our database is what we had created called minimal API. So I'll just copy minimal API, then paste it here. Then you can have trusted connection, it is true. Then multiple active results set, true. Trust server certificate is true. Then our default connection name should be the same as what we have introduced under program.cs. So we have already done that. So under program.cs, we need to add some codes now. So you can see here, we have our app.map get weather forecast. So we need to add something for now our students. So we'll do async task, then list, then we provide our model student, then we say get students, then we'll do data context, we say context, then we do this await context dot students to list. So we want the list of students. Do that. So this is to give us a list of our students. So we have dot map posts. So we want also to add, say add student, then we say async. So this one should be like this. We say async. Then we do this data context. Then we say student, let's say item. Then this one should be like this. Then we actually open and we say context dot student dot add. We add now our item. Then here we say await. We want to save to a database. Await context dot save changes async. Then we say return results dot okay. Then here we say await. If it has saved, then let it give us the students. Then we pass the context. So it will actually save and return the students list. So these get students. So we need to close here. So as you can see, we have, so this get students will return all the students list in the database. And then next we are using the map post method to define a post endpoint. And thereafter we need to bind values from the student item to the context class and save the changes to the database using the save changes async method. So finally, after saving, we return all the students method to confirm our value was added to the database. So the next thing that we need to do is to read. So here we need now to read the data. So we'll say app.map get, say this, and we say pass this, we say student. So this is to retrieve a student. Then we say async. And here we need to pass database context. Then we say context. This will be equal to say await context dot students. Then to list. So this one we close also. So this code will actually give us a list of the students. So we can get the data by the student ID. So we can copy that. Then on our map get we say slash, then we now pass our parameter, assuming we want to get by a student ID. So we will get the students. Then here we say find. So we find async. So we find async, then we pass our ID. So we need to do database context, then here we introduce. Okay, so we have passed our ID, so it will filter that. Then it will give us the ID of the student that we are trying to filter. So what we need to do, we say find async ID. So let's do this. We say map get async database context. We are passing an int. Then we say context students. Then find async. Then what you need to do now is need to know if is student item is empty, then we return results. So results not okay. Then we say here is item. Then we need to, we can do this, we say results not found. not found if there is nothing. And then you can return a message here. We say student not found. So that is fine. Then you can close this. That's fine. So on our find async, you can have see on our find async, you need to know why this is not going through. Let's minimize this. We say find find sync. Yeah, so that is fine. So that is our get by. So we are getting this by an ID, which is student ID. So we need to update. So we need to update our student. So we can copy this. Then we can say you can update a student. So we'll pass the student, then we pass an ID. Say ID, then data context, student item, then we pass an ID. Then we say, inside here we say variable, so declare variable, we say student item is equals to await, then context dot students dot find async, then we pass our ID. So we find the student that we want to update. Then we say if student item is equals to null, then we return results dot not found, and we give them the message student not found. Then we close that. Else, if the student is there, we say student, so we either updating the first name, so it will be that, then our model, which is the item dot first name, then we check student dot item dot last name is the same as item dot last name. Then we now take our, we say, so we can actually save the changes. Yes, and can we update? I can update these. Can do that. Then we save the changes. Then we need to return get students. So this will call our function here to retrieve the students. So these actually will return all the students, and we can update. So the next thing we need is to delete, assuming you want to delete a student record. So we'll do that. We can copy that, then student we pass an ID, then we can pass an ID, we remove this, then we come here, student item, we find that ID. If it is not there, we return that. If it is there, what we need to do, we say context dot remove. So it is actually removing this model It will remove that, save the details, and return all the students. So we need to test our API. So what we need to do, we can launch our API. So we have added some endpoints. Remember, we had only the weather forecast endpoint. So you can see we have some errors. So we need to update this. This is map delete. Then here we were updating. This is map put. Then this was to get. Then this was a get operation. This was a add operation. And this is so the next thing we need to do, so we can actually give a name, assuming we have these closing that. We can have these ones, open API. So we'll give the name of our API. So we can say add students. So you can copy these again. Then you can have it after get. After get, so you can do this. You can do this. Then you can say this is get students. Then you can also you can do this. You can also do this. Or you can even remove these. Do away with this. Then you can do this. This will be get student by ID. Then you can. So this is with open API. Then now this one will be. You can update it this way. Then we say get update student by ID. So update student by ID. Then delete, this will be delete student by ID. You can call it that way. Delete student by ID. And that is it. So if we run this, so this is our endpoints. So we can run this. You see again. There you are. So you can see our minimal APIs. So we have the get, add student, then we get student. We have the delete, put, get, and so that is it. So what we need to do, we need to post students. So assuming this is our post, so you can try. So you'll just say James Wanjala. Then we can save. So you can see it has actually gone through. So this is our data. So it has saved the data to our database. So if we select top, so if we just select this, we'll be able to see we have James Wanjala. So we can add another student. We say Vincent Wambua. So if we add it, you can see it has added and it has given us a list. So you can even say macro code. So if you are new to this channel, consider subscribing for more videos on software development. So if we add it, you can see it has added, and our database, if we just refresh it, you'll be able to see the first name, middle name, and the ID. So the ID is auto-incremental. So that is our post method. So let's see our get method. So we want to retrieve students. So we can try out and we execute. It has given us a list of students. So our get method will actually return all the students. Then we have our get by ID. So we only get students by a particular ID. We want to get number 1. So we pass the ID of that student. Then it will give us, you see it has given us James Wanjala, which has an ID 1. If you do 2, it has given us a Vincent Wambua, which has an ID 1. If you do 3, it has given us a macro code, which is an ID 3. So guys, you can consider subscribing and giving us some comments. Then we can now see the put. You can see, so the put is used to update the students' details. So what we'll do is apply, we want to update students number 1. So the number 1 was called James Wanjala. So we want to call the name maybe Arnold Kimani. So we are changing the ID. So the ID is 1. So if we do that, then we execute. You can see it has updated our details and given us the list of students. So our details now is Arnold Kimani. So if you can see, before we ran the query, this was the name of the student. But in case we retrieve, you see the first student has been named Arnold Kimani. So it has done the update. So the next thing that we need to see is the delete. So we want to delete the first student. So you just pass the ID, execute. You can see it has deleted the students' data. So we only have 2 students, I mean. So if we come to our database, we refresh the table, you can see we only have Vincent Wambua and macro code. So that is more about minimal API and how it works. So if you're new to this channel, guys, consider subscribing and watching our previous videos. See you and keep safe. It is coming with an